The emergency session alarm echoed through the crystalline halls of the Galactic Council Station, its haunting melody designed to reach every species' auditory range. Ambassador Zethkura of the Viridian Empire straightened her iridescent feathers as she glided into the massive circular chamber. The sight that greeted her made her gill slits flutter with anxiety. Representatives from over 200 species filled the amphitheater-style seating, their varied forms creating a tapestry of evolution's countless experiments. The massive holographic display at the chamber's center showed a star map with angry red markers spreading like an infection across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The Devourers have broken through the Kepler defense line, announced Council Prime Tormek, his 4 arms gesticating wildly as his translator implant converted his native clicks and whistles into galactic standard. 17 worlds have gone dark in the past 72 hours. We estimate 40 billion souls lost. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. The Devourers were every spacefaring civilization's nightmare made real, a hive-minded species that consumed entire ecosystems, leaving nothing but bare rock in their wake. They had emerged from dark space 50 years ago, and despite the combined efforts of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, their advance seemed unstoppable. Zethkara's attention turned to the human delegation. They sat quietly in their assigned section, 5 representatives wearing simple blue uniforms that looked almost primitive compared to the elaborate ceremonial garments of other species. She had heard whispers about humans for decades, a young species that had only achieved faster-than-light travel 3 centuries ago, yet had somehow carved out a modest territory in one of the galaxy's outer arms. The rumors about humans were disturbing. Some called them reckless. Others whispered they were unnaturally aggressive. The most troubling reports suggested they were utterly ruthless in warfare, willing to sacrifice anything to achieve victory. Most civilized species kept their distance from human space, treating them as useful but dangerous neighbors. The mathematical projections are clear, continued Tormek, his voice heavy with despair. At their current rate of expansion, the Devourers will reach the galactic core within 18 months. Our combined fleets have proven insufficient to even slow their advance. Representative Kathen of the ancient ethereal collective floated forward, her translucent form shimmering with bioluminescent patterns of distress. We have consulted the deep archives, accessed genetic memories spanning millions of years. Never has the galaxy faced a threat of this magnitude. The Devourers appear to be immune to conventional warfare tactics. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Every species present had contributed their finest military minds, their most advanced weapons, their bravest warriors to the fight against the Devourers. The result had been an unending series of tactical retreats and Pyrrhic victories that only delayed the inevitable. Perhaps, suggested Ambassador Veltar of the crystalline hegemony, his silicon-based form refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns, it is time to consider alternative strategies. The astral remnants possess reality manipulation technology that might prove effective. Several representatives nodded enthusiastically. The astral remnants were one of the galaxy's most mysterious civilizations, beings of pure energy who existed partially outside normal space-time. Their technology seemed like magic to most species, capable of feats that defied conventional physics. We have already approached the remnants, Tormek replied, his tone growing more desperate. They examined our data and concluded that direct intervention would risk damaging the fundamental structure of local reality. The cost would be too great. What about the Void Architects? Suggested another voice. Their mastery of dark matter manipulation could provide new weapons. Already consulted. They require a minimum of 50 years to develop and deploy appropriate technologies. The suggestions continued, each more desperate than the last. The quantum singers, who could alter matter at the subatomic level through harmonic resonance. The temporal guardians, who existed across multiple timelines simultaneously. The living worlds, entire planets that had achieved consciousness and commanded vast biotechnological resources. Each had been contacted, Each had declined or proven unable to help within the necessary time frame. As the discussion grew more frantic, Zethkara noticed the humans hadn't spoken once. Ambassador Chun Lu sat perfectly still, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. Her four companions maintained similar composure, occasionally exchanging brief glances, but saying nothing. "Perhaps we should consider evacuation protocols," suggested Ambassador Krith of the nomadic fleets, his mechanical voice betraying no emotion. "If we cannot stop the Devourers, we might preserve some portion of galactic civilization by fleeing to another galaxy." The chamber erupted in protests. The logistics alone were staggering. Evacuating even a fraction of the galaxy's population would require resources that simply didn't exist. Most species were too deeply rooted in their home worlds to survive such displacement. "Order! Order!" Tormek's voice boomed through the chamber's acoustic amplifiers. "We must maintain rational discourse. Ambassador Zeal of the Merchant Consortium has requested to speak." The insectoid Zeal clicked his mandibles thoughtfully before speaking. "My species has conducted extensive analysis of devourer behavioral patterns. They show remarkable tactical adaptation, learning from each encounter, and developing countermeasures with unprecedented speed. However, our economic models suggest their expansion rate requires enormous resource consumption. They may be vulnerable to supply line disruption." Elaborata commanded Tormek. "The Devourers don't simply destroy worlds. They process them. Every organic molecule is broken down and converted to biomass for their ships and warriors. But this process requires time. If we could force them to move faster than their optimal consumption rate, we might create resource shortages in their fleet." Ambassador Kavin, S-form pulsed with skeptical colors. "How would we force such acceleration? Our fleets cannot even engage their scouts effectively, much less their main force." "Hit and run tactics," Zeal replied. "Small, fast strikes against their processing operations. Force them to divert resources to defense instead of consumption." "Suicide missions," corrected Ambassador Veltar flatly. "No known ship design can survive close approach to devourer processing stations. Their defensive capabilities are too sophisticated." The discussion continued for hours, cycling through increasingly desperate proposals. Some suggested using automated drone fleets to overwhelm devourer defenses through sheer numbers. Others proposed attempting to communicate with the hive mind, seeking some form of diplomatic solution. A few even suggested deliberately contaminating worlds ahead of the devourer advance, making them toxic to the enemy's consumption process. Each idea was analyzed, debated, and ultimately dismissed as either impossible or insufficient. The mathematical reality remained unchanged. The galaxy's finest minds could devise no solution to the devourer threat. As the session stretched into its 8th hour, Tormek called for a brief recess. Representatives clustered in small groups, their conversations subdued and tinged with despair. The overwhelming consensus was clear: the galaxy was doomed. Zethkara found herself drifting toward the human delegation, curiosity overcoming her usual caution. Ambassador Chun Lu stood apart from her companions, studying the tactical display with intense concentration. "Forgive my intrusion," Zethkara said, activating her translation implant, "but I noticed your delegation has remained silent throughout the proceedings. Do humans have no suggestions to offer?" Chun Lu turned, her expression unreadable. "We've been listening, and your people think like prey," Chun Lu said simply. "You're looking for ways to hide, or run, or make the problem go away without getting your hands dirty." Zethkara's feathers ruffled with indignation. "We are civilized beings seeking rational solutions to an unprecedented threat. What would you propose, charging blindly into battle like primitive savages?" Something flickered in Chun Lu's eyes. Not anger, but something far colder. "Tell me, Ambassador Zethkara, how many wars has your species fought in the last 1,000 years?" "Wars?" Zethkara's voice carried confusion and distaste. "The Viridian Empire has been at peace for over 3 millennia. We resolved our last territorial disputes through diplomatic arbitration centuries before we achieved spaceflight. Interesting. Chen Lu's gaze returned to the tactical display. Humans have fought approximately 14,000 documented wars in recorded history. Our last global conflict ended only 400 years ago. How barbaric, Zethkara whispered. Perhaps, but it taught us something your peaceful species never learned. Chen Lu's voice remained perfectly calm. When something wants to kill you and everything you love, you don't look for clever solutions. You find a way to kill it first. Before Zethkara could respond, the session alarm sounded again, calling representatives back to their seats. As they returned to the chamber, Tormek's expression was even grimmer than before. I have received an update from our forward observation posts, he announced. The Devourers have accelerated their advance. Latest projections indicate they will reach the galactic core in 8 months, not 18. A wave of panic swept through the chamber. Several representatives began transmitting emergency communications to their home governments. Others sat in stunned silence, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the crisis. We are therefore implementing Emergency Protocol 7, Tormek continued. All member species are requested to contribute their entire military capabilities to a final defensive line at the Nexus Gateway. If we cannot stop them there, the core worlds will be defenseless. Council Prime, Ambassador Veltar's voice cracked with strain. With respect, our combined fleets have proven insufficient at every engagement. Concentrating them in a single location will only create a larger target for Devourer forces. Do you have a better suggestion? Silence filled the chamber. Every option had been exhausted, every strategy considered and rejected. The greatest minds in galactic history sat helpless before an enemy that seemed to counter their every move. Ido. Every head turned toward the human delegation. Ambassador Chun Lu had risen from her seat, her 4 companions flanking her with military precision. Please elaborate, Ambassador Lu, Tormek said, hope and skepticism warring in his voice. Give us complete tactical command of the defense effort, Chun Lu said simply. Full authority over all military assets, all strategic decisions, all resource allocation. The chamber erupted in outraged protests. Representatives shouted over each other, their translators struggling to process the cacophony of languages and emotional undertones. Preposterous! Ambassador Kavin, S form blazed with indignant colors. Humans are barely above primitive status. Your entire civilization spans less than 200 worlds. Your species is known for its aggressive tendencies, added Ambassador Kretich. We cannot entrust galactic security to a militaristic culture. Chen Lu waited patiently for the outcry to subside before speaking again. You tried everything else. Your civilized, rational approaches have failed completely. The Devourers are 8 months away from ending everything you've built over millions of years. And you believe human brutality will succeed where wisdom has failed? Zethkara asked. I believe, Chen Lu replied coldly, that sometimes survival requires choices that civilized people aren't willing to make. The chamber fell silent. For all their protests, every representative understood the truth behind her words. They had exhausted every option compatible with their moral frameworks, every solution that didn't compromise their ethical standards. What exactly are you proposing? Tormek asked carefully. Total war, Chun Lu answered without hesitation. Not the limited conflicts you people understand with rules and boundaries and concern for collateral damage. Real war, the kind where victory is the only consideration that matters. Explain your strategy, demanded Ambassador Veltar. Chen Lu's expression didn't change. No, if you want our help, you give us complete authority. No oversight, no limitations, no questions about our methods. You won't like what we have to do. How do we know you won't simply use this authority for human expansion? Kavin challenged. Because, Chen Lu said quietly, if the Devourers win, there won't be anything left to expand into. The logic was unassailable, but the implications terrifying. Every species present had heard the rumors about human warfare, their willingness to sacrifice entire populations, their use of weapons other civilizations had banned as too horrific to deploy. I must consult with my government, Tormek said finally. You have 6 hours, Chun-Lu replied. After that, we return to human space and prepare for the Devourer's arrival on our own terms. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, a heavy silence settled over the remaining representatives. They faced an impossible choice: surrender galactic command to a species they considered barbaric, or watch civilization crumble under an unstoppable enemy. The greatest irony wasn't lost on any of them. In their hour of greatest need, when all hope seemed lost, the galaxy's most advanced civilizations were being forced to turn to the one species they had always considered beneath them. The ruthless humans who understood that sometimes survival demanded the unthinkable. The vote took 4 hours and 17 minutes. Ambassador Chun-Lu stood motionless in the observation deck overlooking the council chamber, watching representatives engage in heated debates that would determine the galaxy's fate. Through the transparent aluminum barrier, she could see species clustering into traditional alliance groups, the Silicon Collective arguing amongst themselves in harmonic frequencies, the Aquatic Federation's representatives floating in their portable ocean environments, the energy beings flickering with agitated pulses of light. Behind her, Commander Sarah Martinez monitored incoming tactical data on a portable display. Latest reports show the Devourers have consumed the Helix Nebula Industrial Complex, she said without looking up. That's 3 major shipbuilding facilities in the past week. They're accelerating consumption to build more ships, Chun-Lu observed. They know we're planning something. Dr. James Okafor, the delegation's xenobiologist, approached with a datapad. I've been analyzing the behavioral patterns Ambassador Zeal provided. The Devourers don't just consume randomly. There's a sophisticated prioritization system. Industrial worlds first, then agricultural centers, finally population centers. They're not mindless, Chun-Lu agreed. They understand logistics. That makes them more dangerous, but also more predictable. Captain Rosa Delgado, their military strategist, joined the group. The question is whether these aliens will actually give us the authority we need. Half of them look ready to bolt back to their home systems and hope for the best. They'll vote yes, Chun-Lu said with certainty. How can you be sure? Because they're terrified. Fear makes people do things they never thought possible. As if summoned by her words, Council Prime Tormek's amplified voice filled the observation deck. The emergency session will reconvene. All representatives to their positions. The humans descended to the main chamber, taking their seats as representatives filed in. The atmosphere was heavy with tension and unspoken dread. Several delegations appeared smaller than before. Some species had evidently recalled their ambassadors rather than participate in what was to come. Tormek's forearms trembled slightly as he activated the voting display. By a margin of 63%, the Galactic Council hereby grants temporary emergency command authority to the Human Territorial Authority, with full discretion over military assets and strategic planning in response to the Devourer crisis. A collective sigh seemed to escape the chamber, whether relief or resignation. Chun-Lu couldn't tell. However, Tormek continued, several conditions have been attached to this authorization. First, regular status reports must be provided to this body. Second, any actions that deliberately target civilian populations of member species will result in immediate revocation of authority. Third, no. Chun-Lu's voice cut through the formal proceedings like a blade. We agreed to complete authority with no oversight. You're already trying to impose limitations. Ambassador Zethkara's feathers rustled with indignation. These are reasonable safeguards to prevent abuse of power. These are excuses to maintain control, Chun-Lu replied coldly. You want us to win your war while operating under your moral constraints. The same constraints that have led to your complete failure against the Devourers. Surely some oversight is necessary, protested Ambassador Kathin, her form pulsing with anxious colors. Chun-Lu stood slowly, her expression unchanged. Commander Martinez, signal our ships. We're returning to human space. Wait. Tormek's voice cracked with desperation. You cannot simply abandon the galaxy. We're not abandoning anything, Chun-Lu said, already moving toward the exit. We offered our help under the necessary conditions. You chose to reject those conditions. But the vote was meaningless if you immediately try to modify the terms. Chun-Lu paused at the chamber's threshold. You have 5 minutes to decide whether you want our help badly enough to accept it unconditionally. The humans exited in perfect formation, leaving chaos behind them. Representatives erupted into frantic discussions, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that overwhelmed the translation systems. Through it all, the tactical display continued updating, red markers spreading inexorably across the galactic map. In the corridor outside, Commander Martinez spoke quietly into her comm unit while the others waited. Admiral Parker confirms our fleets are on standby, she reported. But our defensive preparations won't hold more than a few months against the Devourer advance. They'll capitulate, Dr. Okafor observed. They have no choice. Don't be so sure, Captain Delgado warned. Pride makes people do incredibly stupid things. These species have never faced real extinction before. They might not fully grasp what's at stake. Chun-Lu checked her chronometer. 3 minutes. Inside the chamber, the debate reached fever pitch. Ambassador Veltar's crystalline form resonated with stress harmonics as he spoke rapidly with his delegation. The ethereal collective flickered in and out of visible spectrum, their agitation disrupting their normal translucency. Several smaller delegations had gathered around Tormek, their urgent whispers creating a low buzz of anxiety. 2 minutes. Ambassador Liu. Zethkara emerged from the chamber, her normally pristine feathers disheveled. Surely we can reach some accommodation. Your demands are extreme. Our demands are necessary, Chun-Lu replied without turning around. We've studied the Devourers for months while you debated. We know what it will take to stop them. You don't want to know. Then tell us. Make us understand why such authority is required. Chun-Lu finally faced the Viridian diplomat. Because we're going to do things that will horrify you. We're going to make choices that will give your people nightmares for generations. And if you retain any oversight authority, you'll try to stop us at the worst possible moment. What could be so terrible that time's up? Chun-Lu started toward the transport bay. Goodbye, Ambassador. It's been educational. Stop! Tormek's desperate shout echoed through the corridor. The Council Prime appeared in the doorway, his usually dignified bearing replaced by raw panic. The conditions are withdrawn, he gasped. Complete authority. No versaut. No limitations. Chun-Lu paused. Are you certain? Once we begin, there's no stopping until the Devourers are eliminated or we're all dead. The Council has voted unanimously, Tormek confirmed. Do whatever you must. The transformation in the humans was immediate and startling. Their relaxed postures shifted to military bearing, their casual expressions becoming focused and determined. Commander Martinez was already activating encrypted communication channels, while Dr. Okafor began transferring data to his portable systems. We'll need complete access to all military databases, Chun-Lu stated, her tone becoming crisp and professional. Fleet compositions, weapon capabilities, supply lines, industrial capacity. Everything. Granted, unrestricted access to all communication networks. We need to coordinate with every military command in the galaxy. Granted, authorization to requisition any resources we deem necessary from any member species, without question or delay. Tormek hesitated for only a moment. Granted, Captain Delgado stepped forward with a datapad. I need the current positions of all Council member fleets, including those that haven't been committed to anti-Devourer operations. But those forces are needed for home defense. Not anymore, Chun-Lu interrupted. As of this moment, home defense is irrelevant. Either we stop the Devourers completely, or there won't be any homes left to defend. Dr. Okafor was studying the galactic tactical display with intense concentration. The Devourers are using a three-pronged advanced strategy. Main force here, pushing through the core systems. Secondary force here, sweeping the industrial worlds. Tertiary force moving along the rim, cutting off retreat routes. Classic envelopment tactics, Commander Martinez observed. They're not just consuming, they're thinking strategically, which means they could be outthought, Chun Lu said. Dr. Okafor, I need detailed biological analysis of every devourer specimen we've captured. Physical capabilities, metabolic requirements, sensory limitations. Most specimen data is incomplete, Dr. Okafor warned. The devourer's acidic biology destroys most remains before analysis is possible. Then, we'll get better specimens. The cold certainty in Chun Lu's voice made several nearby representatives take involuntary steps backward. Ambassador Zethkara's gill slits fluttered rapidly as she processed the implications. You intend to capture live devourers? She asked incredulously. Among other things. Chun Lu turned to Captain Delgado. How long to establish unified command structure with all Council military assets? 48 hours if they cooperate fully. 72 hours if there's resistance from local commanders. Make it 24 hours. Chun Lu's expression brooked no argument. Anyone who resists gets relieved of command immediately. Some species maintain strict hierarchical military traditions, Tormek warned. Their commanders may not accept orders from an outside authority. Then, they'll be replaced by commanders who will. Chun Lu began walking toward the chamber's main communication console. Dr. Okafor began detailed analysis of devourer expansion patterns. I want to know their target priorities down to individual systems. Already working on it. The xenobiologist's fingers flew across multiple data interfaces. Their consumption rate suggests they need to process approximately 50 billion tons of organic matter per day to maintain current fleet size. Commander Martinez, establish secure communication with Admiral Parker. Tell her to implement Protocol Omega immediately. Martinez paused, her expression uncertain. Ma'am, Protocol Omega hasn't been approved by Earth Command. It is now. Chun Lu's voice carried absolute authority. Captain Delgado, I need deployment recommendations for non-human fleets. Assume they have no experience with total war tactics. Most alien vessels are designed for precision engagements, Delgado observed. Their weapons systems prioritize accuracy over raw destructive power. Their defensive strategies focus on minimizing casualties rather than maximizing enemy losses. Can they be retrained? Some. The warrior species might adapt quickly. The more peaceful civilizations. Delgado shrugged expressively. Chun Lu nodded grimly. Separate them into 3 categories. Those who can learn total war tactics, those who can provide support functions, and those who should stay out of the way. That's rather harsh, Ambassador Zethkara protested. It's realistic, Chun Lu replied. This isn't about politics or feelings. Some species are better suited for combat than others. We'll use everyone according to their capabilities. Dr. Okafor looked up from his analysis. I'm seeing some interesting patterns in the devourer expansion. They avoid certain types of stellar environments, high radiation zones, gravitational anomalies, areas with unusual electromagnetic fields. Vulnerabilities? Possibly. Or they might just prioritize easier targets while building strength. Commander Martinez finished her encrypted conversation and approached Chun Lu. Admiral Parker confirms Protocol Omega is active. She wants to know if you're certain about the target selection. Tell her I'm certain. Chun Lu's expression remained impassive. How long until our reinforcement arrive? 18 hours for the first wave. 48 hours for full deployment. Around them, alien representatives listened in growing confusion and concern. The human spoke in clipped, efficient phrases that conveyed vast amounts of information through coded references and military shorthand. It was becoming clear that their emergency command structure had been planned long before the council vote. You've been preparing for this, Tormek accused. We've been preparing for the possibility, Chun Lu corrected. Human strategic doctrine requires contingency planning for every scenario, including taking command of the entire galaxy, including whatever actions are necessary for species survival. Captain Delgado finished her preliminary fleet analysis and handed Chen-Lu a datapad. Non-human forces total approximately 47,000 vessels of various classes. Combat effectiveness ranges from excellent to essentially negligible. Chen-Lu scanned the data quickly. The crystalline hegemony fleets, high-end combat vessels, excellent defensive capabilities, sophisticated targeting systems. Their commanders have tactical experience from the Void Wars. The Aquatic Federation, fast ships, good for hit-and-run tactics but limited endurance. Their crews can't survive extended combat operations. Ethereal Collective, powerful energy weapons, advanced propulsion systems. But they avoid physical conflict as a matter of principle. Chen-Lu made rapid notations on the pad. Assign the crystalline forces to primary assault duties. Put the Aquatic Federation on harassment and reconnaissance. The Ethereals will find something non-violent for them to do. What about the smaller species? Tormek asked. Supply lines, medical support, communications relay. Everyone contributes according to their abilities. Dr. Okafor approached with new data. I've identified a potential devourer weakness. Their hive mind seems to require constant communication between nodes. Disrupt the communication network, and individual units become significantly less effective. How do we disrupt it? Unknown. The communication method appears to be quantum entangled rather than electromagnetic. We need to capture intact communication nodes for analysis. Chen-Lu made another note. Add quantum communication analysis to the research priorities. Commander Martinez checked her chronometer. Ma'am, we should establish primary command center soon. What do you want to coordinate operations? Chen-Lu looked around the council chamber, taking in the worried faces of dozens of species who had just surrendered control of their military forces to beings they considered barely above barbarians. Here, she decided, if we're going to save this galaxy, we might as well do it from the place that represents everything we're fighting for. Her gaze settled on the massive tactical display, showing devourer forces spreading like cancer through civilized space. In the past hour, 2 more systems had gone dark. Besides, she added quietly, they need to see how real war is fought. Maybe they'll learn something. The true horror of what was about to begin hadn't even started to sink in. The council chamber transformed overnight. Where once elegant seating arrangements had accommodated diplomatic discourse, banks of military equipment now hummed with constant activity. Human technicians had replaced the ornate central hologram with a massive tactical display that showed real-time galactic military positions with ruthless precision. The gentle, multispectral lighting designed to accommodate various alien visual systems gave way to the harsh white illumination preferred for combat operations. Ambassador Zethkura perched uncomfortably on what had been the Viridian Empire's diplomatic platform, now serving as an observation post for non-essential personnel. Around her, representatives from dozens of species watched in fascination and growing horror as humans implemented their version of military command. Fleet designation Omega-7. Adjust your position to grid reference 4-4-7 Alpha. Commander Martinez spoke crisply into her headset. Maintain radio silence until engagement sequence begins. Admiral Taith of the Crystalline Hegemony reports his ships are in position, reported a human communications specialist. He's requesting clarification on rules of engagement. Tell him there are no rules of engagement. Chen-Lu replied, without looking up from her data screens. Destroy everything that moves in Devourer-controlled space. No exceptions. A collective gasp arose from the alien observers. Ambassador Kavin, as ethereal form flickered with distress patterns. Surely some discrimination is necessary? There may be survivors on captured worlds. Chen-Lu's hands never paused in their manipulation of tactical data. Dr. Okafor's biological analysis confirms that devourers convert all organic matter within 4 hours of planetary occupation. Any survivors would have been processed days ago. But without verification, Zethkara began. Verification requires reconnaissance. Reconnaissance requires ships. Ships are needed for combat operations. Chen-Lu's voice carried the cold logic of mathematics. We don't have enough resources to waste on impossible rescue missions. Captain Delgado approached with updated fleet positions. Human reinforcements are arriving on schedule. Admiral Parker's task force will be in position in 6 hours. What about the Void Architects' promised support? Chen Lu asked. They've transmitted technical specifications for their dark matter disruptors, but they won't commit ships directly. Their analysis suggests direct engagement would compromise their transdimensional stability. Useless. Chen Lu made notation on her command pad. What's the status on biological weapon development? Dr. Okafor looked up from his research station, where multiple alien scientists worked frantically alongside human researchers. The Ethereal Collective provided samples of their quantum resonance technology. Combined with our understanding of devour biology, we might be able to develop targeted pathogens. Timeline: 3 weeks for initial prototypes. 6 weeks for large-scale deployment. Too slow. The Devourers will reach the galactic core in 4 weeks. Chen Lu turned to face the assembled alien observers. I need volunteers for high-risk reconnaissance missions. Ships fast enough to penetrate Devourer space and return with detailed intelligence. Silence filled the chamber. Several alien representatives shifted uncomfortably, their various forms of body language all conveying the same message. They had no intention of volunteering for what sounded like suicide missions. The nomadic fleets have ships designed for deep space survival. Tormek offered hesitantly. But their crews are not trained for combat situations. We'll provide combat training, Commander Martinez stated. How long do they need? Their cultural traditions require extensive preparation for dangerous missions. Perhaps several months. They have 12 hours, Chen Lu interrupted. After that, we proceed without them. Ambassador Krith's mechanical voice resonated with indignation. 12 hours is insufficient for proper psychological preparation. My people require ritual purification and consensus building before undertaking life-threatening activities. Your people can purify themselves while learning to operate human weapons systems, Captain Delgado replied bluntly. The Devourers don't care about your cultural traditions. The brutal efficiency of human military thinking was beginning to sink in. Where alien civilizations saw complex social and ethical considerations, humans saw only variables to be optimized for maximum combat effectiveness. Contact from Admirals HTEL of the Aquatic Federation reported a communications specialist. His fast attack squadrons have engaged Devourer scouts in the Proxima cluster, requesting immediate support. Chen Lu studied the tactical display. How many Devourer ships? Estimated 37 vessels, mixed classes. How many Federation ships? 42 light cruisers. Tell Admirals HTEL to withdraw immediately, Chen Lu ordered. But they have numerical superiority, protested Ambassador Veltar. Surely they can defeat a slightly smaller force? The Federation ships are designed for speed, not sustained combat, Captain Delgado explained. Devourers excel at close-range fighting. In a direct engagement, the Aquatics would lose at least half their force for minimal enemy casualties. Then, what's the point of having them engage at all? Demanded Ambassador Kavin. Intelligence gathering, Dr. Okafor replied. Every engagement provides data about Devourer capabilities and tactics. We're learning their response patterns. The casual way he spoke about sacrificing lives for information made several alien representatives visibly recoil. Their peaceful civilizations had never developed the cold calculus necessary for total warfare. Admiral Parker is requesting permission to implement Plan Scarecrow, Commander Martinez reported. Chen Lu paused, considering. Casualties? Estimated 800,000 civilian deaths. But it would delay Devourer advance by approximately 2 weeks. Approved. The simple word fell into silence like a stone into still water. Ambassador Zethkara felt her breathing apparatus struggle as she processed what she had just heard. You just authorized the death of 800,000 beings, she whispered. I authorized a tactical operation that will save billions, Chen Lu corrected. Plan Scarecrow involves detonating stellar fusion reactors in evacuated industrial systems. The radiation will make those areas uninhabitable for Devourer consumption while forcing them to alter their advance routes. But you said civilian deaths. Evacuation procedures aren't perfect, Dr. Okafor explained. Statistical analysis indicates approximately 0.2% of civilian populations won't reach evacuation points in time. The mathematical precision with which humans calculated acceptable losses was perhaps more disturbing than the losses themselves. These beings had reduced the value of life to numerical probabilities and strategic advantages. How can you be so callous? Zitkara demanded. Chun Lu finally looked up from her displays, fixing the Viridian diplomat with unsteady gaze. Because someone has to be. Your people spent 6 hours debating whether to authorize this operation. In that time, the Devourers consumed 3 more worlds, approximately 2 billion lives. My callousness just saved more people than your entire species has ever birthed. The brutal logic was unassailable, but the implications chilled every alien observer to their core. This was what real warfare looked like. Not the ritualized conflicts and limited engagements their civilizations remembered, but the absolute commitment to victory regardless of cost. Update from the Helix sector, reported a communications specialist. Crystalline hegemony forces have made contact with Devourer advance units. Admiral Tkaith reports his weapons are proving effective against enemy shields. Casualties? Captain Delgado asked. Minimal so far. The Crystallines are maintaining maximum range engagement. Good. Tell Tkaith to avoid close combat at all costs. His ships are too valuable to risk in knife fights. Dr. Okafor approached with new data. Analysis of Federation engagement reports shows interesting patterns. The Devourers appear to have 3 distinct ship classes: heavy assault units, medium processing ships, and small scout vessels. But their tactics suggest the scout ships are controlling the larger vessels. Command and control nodes, Chen Lu observed. If we can identify and eliminate the scouts, the larger ships become less coordinated. Exactly. But the scouts are heavily protected and extremely maneuverable. Conventional weapons can't track them effectively. What about unconventional weapons? Dr. Okafor exchanged glances with several alien scientists. The Temporal Guardians provided some fascinating technology. Localized time dilation fields that could slow enemy ships to near stationary targets. Deployment requirements? Large immobile platforms. They'd be sitting ducks for Devourer heavy weapons. Unless they were protected by expendable forces, Commander Martinez suggested. Chun Lu nodded slowly. How many ships would we need to sacrifice to protect each temporal platform? Conservative estimate? 50 vessels per platform. For how long? 20 minutes of operational time before Devourer forces overwhelm the protection. Chun Lu made rapid calculations. 20 minutes per platform. Maximum effectiveness against scout ships. We could eliminate their command structure across an entire sector. At the cost of thousands of ships and crews, Ambassador Tormek protested. At the cost of winning, Chun Lu corrected. Dr. Okafor, how many temporal platforms can the Guardians provide? They've offered 12 units, maximum. Then, we can clear 12 sectors of Devourer command ships. Captain Delgado, identify our least combat-effective vessels for platform protection duties. The peaceful species won't volunteer their crews for certain death, Delgado warned. Then, we'll use automated vessels. Convert civilian ships to remote-controlled platforms. The systematic way humans plan mass sacrifice was becoming too much for some observers. Ambassador Kathin flickered out of visible existence entirely, her distress overwhelming her species' normal coherence. Several smaller delegations had already withdrawn from the chamber, unable to witness what they considered unacceptable brutality. Contact from Earth Command, Commander Martinez announced. Admiral Parker reports her task force is ready to implement Operation Prometheus. Prometheus? Tormek asked. Chun Lu's expression became grimmer than ever. Dr. Okafor explained the theoretical basis for Operation Prometheus. The xenobiologist looked uncomfortable. It's based on analysis of Devourer reproductive cycles. They appear to spawn new units using genetic material from consumed organic matter. If we could introduce corrupted genetic information into their processing systems, a biological weapon designed to corrupt their entire reproductive chain, Chun Lu finished. Every new devourer spawned would carry lethal genetic defects. That's genocide, whispered Ambassador Zethkara. That's victory, Chun Lu replied coldly. The devourers don't take prisoners, don't negotiate, and don't show mercy. They exist only to consume. Our choice is simple. Commit genocide against them, or watch them commit genocide against every other living thing in the galaxy. But there must be alternatives, name one. Chun Lu's challenge hung in the air like an accusation. You've had 50 years to find alternatives. Your best scientists, your most brilliant strategists, your most advanced technologies, none of them produced a solution that didn't require someone else to fight your war for you. The truth was devastating in its simplicity. Every alien civilization present had contributed to the fight against the Devourers, but none had been willing to make the ultimate sacrifices necessary for victory. They had sought clever solutions, technological advantages, diplomatic possibilities, anything except the brutal arithmetic of total warfare. Operation Prometheus requires live Devourer specimens for genetic analysis. Dr. Okafor continued. We'll need to capture a processing ship intact. Capture requirements? Chun Lu asked. Boarding action against a vessel approximately 2 kilometers long, defended by thousands of Devourer warriors, while keeping the ship's biological systems intact. Captain Delgado whistled softly. Casualty estimates for the boarding force? 90% minimum, possibly total. How many volunteers do we need? 5,000 troops for a reasonable chance of success. Chun Lu nodded decisively. Put out a call for volunteers. Make the mission requirements clear. This is a one-way trip. Human forces only? Delgado asked. Start with humans. If we need more bodies, we'll ask for alien volunteers. The casual way she spoke about needing more bodies sent chills through the remaining observers. This was how humans conducted warfare, with complete acceptance of necessary sacrifices and unwavering focus on the ultimate objective. As if summoned by the conversation, Admiral Parker's image appeared on the main communication screen. Her weather-beaten face showed the strain of constant combat operations, but her voice remained crisp and professional. Command, this is Admiral Parker reporting. My task force is in position for Operation Prometheus. We have volunteers for the boarding action. More than we need, actually. How many? Chun Lu asked. 47,000 applications. We're screening for the 5,000 most qualified. The number hit the alien observers like a physical blow. 47,000 humans had volunteered for a mission with near-certain death, and they had done so knowing the exact odds. This level of commitment to species survival was utterly alien to civilizations that had known only peace for millennia. Proceed with Operation Prometheus, Chun Lu ordered. Dr. Okafor will transmit the biological analysis requirements. Understood. One question. What if we can't take a ship intact? Chun Lu's pause lasted only a moment. Then, take as many pieces as possible. As Admiral Parker's image faded, the chamber fell into stunned silence. Every alien representative struggled to process what they had witnessed. The casual acceptance of massive casualties, the systematic planning of genocide, the absolute commitment to victory regardless of moral cost. This was what humans called war. And for the first time since the Devourer crisis began, the galaxy had leaders willing to wage it properly. The question remaining was whether civilization could survive the cure as well as the disease. The first reports from Operation Prometheus arrived 18 hours later. Ambassador Zethkara had remained in the command center despite her growing horror, unable to look away from humanity's systematic approach to galactic warfare. Around her, the few remaining alien observers maintained similar vigils, witnessing the transformation of their civilized galaxy into a battlefield where the unthinkable had become routine. Admiral Parker to command, the communication system crackled with static from extreme-range transmission. Operation Prometheus successful. Repeat, we have secured a Devourer processing vessel intact. Chen Lu's expression remained impassive. Casualties. Boarding force casualties, 94%. Ship casualties, we lost the entire task force except for my flagship. The numbers were staggering. 37 ships destroyed, nearly 5,000 elite troops dead, all to capture a single enemy vessel. Yet Chen Lu simply nodded, as if this outcome had been expected. Was the sacrifice worth it? Demanded Ambassador Kevin, her ethereal form pulsing with anguish. Dr. Okafor will determine that, Chen Lu replied. Doctor, how long before we have actionable intelligence? Dr. Okafor was already analyzing preliminary data streaming from Admiral Parker's ship. Initial scans show intact biological processing systems. We're getting detailed readings on Devourer genetic structure, reproductive cycles, metabolic requirements. This is unprecedented access to their core biology. Timeline for weapon development. If the data confirms our theories, 48 hours for prototype development, another 72 hours for deployment systems. 5 days total, Chen Lu calculated. Can we hold the defense lines for 5 more days? Captain Delgado consulted multiple tactical displays. Devourer advance has accelerated following our harassment campaigns. They're pushing harder, accepting higher losses to maintain momentum. Current projections show core worlds under attack within 72 hours. Then we buy ourselves those extra 2 days. Chen Lu activated the general communication system. All fleet commanders implement Operation Falling Sky immediately. Ambassador Zethkara felt her gill slits constrict. What is Operation Falling Sky? Commander Martinez answered while coordinating fleet movements. Controlled collapse of our outer defense perimeter. We make it look like we're retreating in disorder while channeling Devourer forces into prepared kill zones. But that will expose dozens of inhabited systems, which have already been evacuated, Captain Delgado added. We've been moving civilian populations for the past week, while the evacuation looked like normal refugee assistance. The scope of human strategic planning was becoming clear. They had been implementing multiple contingency plans simultaneously, preparing for scenarios the alien observers hadn't even considered. While the galaxy's leaders debated ethics, humans have been making the hard decisions necessary for survival. Update from the Crystalline Hegemony Forces, reported a communications specialist. Admiral Kaith reports heavy fighting in the Nexus approach. His ships are taking significant casualties, but maintaining position. Tell Kaith to begin strategic withdrawal in 6 hours, Chen Lu ordered. He needs to draw Devourer forces toward the Omega Trap. The Omega Trap? Tormek asked nervously. 14-star systems with prepositioned stellar disruption charges. Dr. Okafor explained without looking up from his analysis. When triggered simultaneously, they'll create a gravitational anomaly field spanning 3 sectors. Ambassador Veltar's crystalline form resonated with shock. You're destroying entire star systems? We're using them as weapons, Chen Lu corrected. The gravitational disruption will tear apart any Devourer fleet caught in the effect radius. What about the inhabited worlds in those systems? Already evacuated or written off as acceptable losses. The casual mention of written-off populations made several aliens recoil physically. These humans spoke about sacrificing entire worlds with the same tone their own species used to discuss menu choices. Dr. Okafor, progress report, Chen Lu demanded. Excellent progress. The captured Devourer vessel is providing incredible insights. Their biology is more complex than we imagined, but also more vulnerable. They require specific amino acid chains for reproduction, chains that can be corrupted with targeted viral agents. How targeted? Species-specific. The weapon will only affect Devourer biology. Other organic life forms will be completely unaffected. Deployment method? Aerosol dispersal through their ship ventilation systems, contamination of their food processing centers, or direct injection into their reproductive chambers. Chen Lu made rapid notes. Can it be weaponized for artillery deployment? Theoretically, yes. We could modify conventional torpedoes to carry viral payloads. Do it. I want every ship in the galaxy equipped with these weapons within 48 hours. Commander Martinez looked up from her coordination duties. Ma'am, that's impossible. The logistics alone, then make it possible, Chun-Lu replied coldly. Dr. Okafor, what resources do you need? Complete access to all biological research facilities in the galaxy, unlimited requisition authority for materials, and approximately 10,000 qualified xenobiologists working around the clock. Granted, Chun-Lu activated her general communication system again. All member species are ordered to transfer their complete biological research capabilities to central coordination immediately. No exceptions. You can't simply commandeer our entire scientific establishment, protested Ambassador Kretich. I can and I am. Any species that refuses will be excluded from the weapon distribution when it's complete. The threat was subtle but devastating. Species that didn't contribute to weapon development would be defenseless when the Devourers reached their territory. It was cooperation through calculated threat rather than moral persuasion. Update from Operation Falling Sky. Captain Delgado reported. Aquatic Federation forces have successfully led Devourer advance units into the first kill zone. Crystalline hegemony forces are implementing gravitational mine detonation sequence. Results: 17 Devourer ships destroyed, approximately 40 damaged. Our casualties: the Federation lost 32 vessels. Exchange ratio: nearly 2-to-1 in our favor. Chun-Lu nodded approvingly. First positive exchange ratio we've achieved. The aquatics performed well. The fact that she considered massive casualties acceptable as long as enemy losses were higher demonstrated the difference between human and alien approaches to warfare. Where other species sought to minimize their own losses, humans optimized for maximum enemy casualties. Admiral Parker requesting priority communication, announced a specialist. Admiral Parker's image appeared again, her face showing exhaustion and grim satisfaction. Command, we've completed initial analysis of the Devourer vessel. Dr. Okafor's theories are correct. Their reproductive cycle is completely dependent on specific genetic markers. But we've discovered something else. Elaborate. They're not naturally occurring. Someone created them. Silence filled the command center. The implications were staggering. The Devourers weren't a natural disaster, but a weapon unleashed by some unknown intelligence. Evidence? Chun-Lu asked. Genetic structure too complex for natural evolution. Technological implants integrated into their biology, and, most importantly, built-in control mechanisms. Someone designed them to be controllable. Who? Unknown. But the control systems are still active. If we could crack the command codes, Chun-Lu's mind was already racing through possibilities. Could we take control of their entire fleet? Theoretically possible, but we need to penetrate their central command network, which appears to be located in their main hive complex. Location. Based on communication intercepts and fleet movement patterns, we believe it's in the galactic core region, somewhere in the Sagittarius cluster. Dr. Okafor looked up from his research with excitement. If we could access their command network, we wouldn't need the biological weapon. We could simply shut them down, or turn them against whoever created them. Chun-Lu added thoughtfully. The possibility of victory without genocide was tantalizing, but the practical requirements remained daunting. Penetrating to the galactic core meant fighting through the largest concentration of Devourer forces in known space. What would such an operation require? Asked Ambassador Tormek. Everything, Captain Delgado replied after quick calculations. Every ship, every weapon, every capable warrior in the galaxy. Complete commitment with no reserves held back for defense. All-or-nothing strategy, Commander Martinez observed. If we fail, there's no fallback plan. There's no fallback plan anyway, Chun-Lu pointed out. Either we stop the Devourers completely, or they consume the galaxy. Partial victory isn't possible. Ambassador Zethkara found herself speaking despite her growing horror at human methods. How certain are you that this control network exists? 70% confidence based on available data, Dr. Okafor replied. But confirmation would require closer examination of their command vessels. More boarding actions? Or we could try a different approach, Chun Lu said slowly. Dr. Okafor, could we modify the biological weapon to target only the control mechanisms instead of killing the creatures? Interesting possibility. If we could disrupt their cybernetic implants without affecting their base biology, they'd revert to their original nature, Chun Lu finished. Whatever they were before someone weaponized them. But we don't know what their original nature was, Dr. Okafor warned. They might still be hostile, or they might be intelligent enough to negotiate with, Chun Lu countered. And if they're naturally occurring, but artificially controlled, they're victims of this situation just like us. The concept was revolutionary. Instead of genocide, liberation. Instead of destroying an enemy, freeing potential allies. It was a strategy that appealed to both human practicality and alien moral sensibilities. Timeline for development of a control disruption weapon? Chun Lu asked. Unknown. We be working from theoretical principles with limited time for testing. Best estimate. 1 week for prototype development, another week for deployment preparation. Too long. Chun Lu studied the tactical displays showing Devourer forces closing on the galactic core. We have to choose. Go with the biological weapon we know we can develop, or gamble everything on a control disruption weapon that might not work. Or, suggested Commander Martinez, develop both simultaneously. Resource requirements? Everything we have, plus some things we don't have. Chun Lu made her decision with the same cold calculation she had applied to every crisis since taking command. We develop both weapons in parallel. If the control disruption approach works, we liberate the Devourers. If it fails, we exterminate them. And if both approaches fail, asked Ambassador Kathin, then we make our last stand in the core systems and take as many of them with us as possible. The stark honesty was simultaneously terrifying and oddly comforting. These humans would never surrender, never accept defeat, never stop fighting until the last possible moment. It was a level of determination that their peaceful civilizations couldn't fully comprehend. As the command center buzzed with renewed activity, alien observers struggled to process what they had witnessed. In less than a week, humans had transformed a hopeless defensive campaign into an aggressive strategy for total victory. They had demonstrated capabilities that civilized species had never imagined, made sacrifices that peaceful peoples would never accept, and maintained determination that sophisticated cultures had long forgotten. The question was no longer whether the galaxy could be saved. The question was what kind of galaxy would emerge from humanity's version of salvation, and whether the universe was ready for a species that waged war like forces of nature themselves. 6 days later, the galaxy held its breath. Ambassador Zeth Kara stood in the transformed council chamber, watching displays that showed the largest military operation in recorded galactic history. Every available ship from every species had been committed to what humans called Operation Endgame, a massive assault on the Devourer home base in the Sagittarius cluster. The scope was overwhelming. 50,000 vessels from 200 different species, coordinated by human strategic doctrine into a single, overwhelming spearhead aimed at the galactic core. It was either the most brilliant military campaign ever conceived or the most spectacular suicide in cosmic history. Final weapon systems, check complete, Dr. Okafor reported from his expanded research station. Both biological weapons are loaded and ready for deployment. The control disruption weapon? Chun Lu asked. Theoretical effectiveness 85%. Real-world testing impossible under current circumstances. The extermination weapon. Theoretical effectiveness 98%. Lab testing confirms complete lethality against Devourer biology. Chun Lu nodded grimly. Admiral Parker, fleet status? Admiral Parker's image appeared on the main screen, transmitted from the bridge of her flagship deep in Devourer-controlled space. Behind her, the organized chaos of combat operations was visible. Crew members manning weapon stations, damage control teams rushing through corridors, the constant stream of tactical updates that defined modern warfare. Fleet is holding formation despite heavy resistance, Parker reported. We've lost approximately 30% of our force penetrating the outer perimeter, but we're maintaining cohesion. Devourer response is massive but uncoordinated. Explain uncoordinated, Commander Martinez requested. Their individual units are fighting effectively, but they're not communicating properly between groups. It's like each ship is operating independently instead of as part of a unified fleet. Dr. Okafor looked up from his displays with excitement. That confirms our theory about the central control network. They're not naturally hive-minded. They require technological coordination. How long until you reach the central command complex? Chen Lu asked. At current rate of advance, approximately 4 hours. But casualties are mounting rapidly. We might not have enough ships left to secure the target. The brutal arithmetic of total warfare was playing out in real time. Every hour brought them closer to victory or complete annihilation, with no middle ground possible. Contact from Admiral Tkaith, reported a communications specialist. Crystalline Hegemony forces request permission to implement their final protocol. Chen Lu paused. The Crystalline Hegemony's final protocol involved converting their ships into massive kinetic weapons, sacrificing their crews to create devastating impacts against enemy targets. It was their species' ultimate expression of commitment to the cause. Granted, Chen Lu said finally. Tell Admiral Tkaith that his people's sacrifice will be remembered. Ambassador Veltar's crystalline form resonated with harmonics that conveyed both pride and overwhelming sorrow. His entire species' fleet was about to die, but they would do so in service of something greater than themselves. Update from the Galactic Rim, Captain Delgado announced. Aquatic Federation fast attack squadrons have successfully eliminated the last Devourer supply convoys. Their main force is now completely cut off from reinforcement. Excellent. How are our own supply lines? Non-existent. We're operating entirely on prepositioned resources and what we can salvage from the battlefield. It was typical of human strategic thinking. They had committed everything to a single decisive operation, holding nothing back for contingencies or retreat. Victory or death, with no alternative considered. Dr. Okafor, Chen Lu said, prepare both weapons for immediate deployment. I want them ready the moment we reach the target. Both weapons? Ambassador Zethkara asked. Surely you'll try the control disruption approach first? We'll try both simultaneously, Chen Lu replied. If the control disruption works, the extermination weapon will become irrelevant. If it fails, we won't have time for a second attempt. The logic was flawless, but the implications were staggering. They would attempt to free the Devourers from external control while simultaneously preparing to commit genocide against them. Success meant liberation. Failure meant annihilation. Admiral Parker to command. The communication system crackled. We're encountering massive resistance at the core perimeter. Devourer forces are different here. Elaborate. They're fighting with coordination I haven't seen before. Like they're all controlled by a single intelligence. And their ships are larger, more heavily armed. Dr. Okafor frowned at his displays. That suggests we're approaching the central control network. The closer we get, the more directly they're managed by their command system. Casualties? Chen Lu asked. Heavy. We're losing ships faster than projected. Current estimates suggest we'll reach the target with less than 20% of our original force. The numbers were devastating, but Chen Lu's expression didn't change. Continue the advance. Ma'am, at this rate we won't have enough ships left to secure the target area. Then, we'll do it with whatever ships we have left. The absolute refusal to consider retreat was quintessentially human. Where other species might withdraw to preserve their forces for another attempt, humans would fight until the last ship was destroyed. Contact from the Ethereal Collective, announced a communications specialist. They're reporting strange energy readings from the galactic core. Something is awakening. Ambassador Kaven materialized more solidly than usual, her form bright with alarm patterns. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our archives. Whatever controls the Devourers is responding to our approach. Responding how? Chen Lu demanded. Unknown. But the power levels are astronomical. If it's a weapon system, then we'll destroy it before it can be used, Chen Lu said simply. Dr. Okafor, can you modify the weapons for use against energy-based targets? The biological weapons wouldn't be effective, but the control disruption system might work if we recalibrated it for pure energy entities. Do it. How long? 20 minutes for basic modifications. Admiral Parker, can you hold position for 20 minutes? Negative. Devour resistance is increasing exponentially. We need to advance now or lose the momentum entirely. Chen Lu made the calculation instantly. Advance. Dr. Okafor, you have until Parker reaches the target to complete modifications. What followed was the most intense 20 minutes in galactic history. While Admiral Parker's fleet fought through layers of increasingly desperate Devour resistance, Dr. Okafor and his team worked frantically to modify weapons they barely understood for use against an enemy they had never encountered. Crystalline Hegemony Final Protocol initiated, reported Captain Delgado. Admiral Taith's entire fleet is converting to kinetic projectiles. On the tactical display, 50 crystalline vessels suddenly accelerated beyond sustainable speeds, their crews accepting death to transform their ships into unstoppable missiles. The impact against Devourer defensive positions was visible even from the galactic rim. Bright flashes of destruction that cleared a path for the remaining human forces. Aquatic Federation reports their fast attack squadrons are engaging Devourer reinforcements, Commander Martinez announced. They're accepting massive casualties to prevent enemy flanking maneuvers. Every species was making ultimate sacrifices, committing their finest warriors and most advanced ships to a single desperate gamble. The peaceful civilizations that had never known real war were learning its true cost. Dr. Okafor, status? Chen Lu demanded. Modifications complete, but untested. I have no idea if this will work. Admiral Parker, status? Approaching the target now. Visual confirmation of the Central Command complex, dear God. Parker's image showed something that challenged comprehension. The Devourer Command Center wasn't a ship or station. It was a construct the size of a small planet, composed of organic material and crystalline technology fused into patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Okafor, Parker's voice was strained. You need to see this. The energy readings, whatever's, controlling the Devourers isn't just intelligent. It's ancient. These power signatures match theoretical models for entities that predate the current galactic cycle. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. The Devourers weren't weapons created by some contemporary species. They were tools of something that had existed since the galaxy was young, something that had waited millions of years to emerge again. Deploy both weapons immediately, Chen Lu ordered. Ma'am, we should now, Admiral, before that thing fully awakens. What happened next would be analyzed by xenoarchaeologists for millennia. 2 human weapons struck the ancient command complex simultaneously, one designed to disrupt technological control systems, the other to annihilate Devourer biology completely. The complex responded with energies that registered across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. For 17 minutes, the galactic core blazed with light visible from the rim worlds. Gravitational anomalies rippled through space-time itself. Reality seemed to flex and strain under forces that shouldn't exist. When the chaos finally subsided, Admiral Parker's voice emerged from static-filled communications. Control to fleet. The Devourers, they've stopped fighting. Stop fighting? Chen Lu asked. They're just floating, not moving, not attacking. Like someone turned them off. Dr. Okafor was frantically analyzing sensor data. The control disruption weapon worked. The command complex is offline, but the Devourers are still alive. We actually freed them. Across the galaxy, Devourer fleets simply halted their advance. Ships that had been consuming worlds for 50 years suddenly went dormant, their crews apparently confused and directionless. Admiral Parker, attempt communication with the nearest Devourer vessel. Chun-Lu ordered. Minutes passed before Parker's voice returned, filled with wonder. Command, they're responding. The Devourers are. They're asking for help. They remember being controlled, but they don't remember who they really are. They want to know how to go home. The revelation hit the council chamber like a physical blow. The most feared enemy in galactic history had been victims all along, an enslaved species forced to commit atrocities against their will. Ambassador Zethkara felt her worldview collapse and rebuild itself in the space a heartbeat. What happens now? Chun-Lu was studying tactical displays that showed thousands of Devourer ships sitting motionless throughout the galaxy. Now we help them remember who they are. We find their original homeworld, help them recover their culture, and teach them to live peacefully. After everything they've done, after everything they were forced to do, Chun-Lu corrected. They're not our enemies. They're our newest allies. The transformation was complete. In 6 days, humans had taken command of galactic military forces, implemented strategies that horrified civilized species, and somehow managed to win through liberation rather than extermination. Dr. Okafor, Chun-Lu continued, begin developing cultural restoration protocols. I want to help the Devourers recover their original identity. And their victims? The worlds they consumed. Chun-Lu's expression grew sad for the first time since taking command. We'll mourn the dead and help the survivors. But we won't blame the Devourers for crimes they were forced to commit. Ambassador Tormek approached slowly, his forearms trembling. Ambassador Lu, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I must apologize. We doubted your methods, questioned your authority, and failed to understand what real leadership requires. You don't need to apologize, Chun-Lu replied. Your people have lived in peace for so long that you forgot how to fight. That's not a failure. It's an achievement we should all aspire to. Will humans help us learn to defend ourselves properly? Chun-Lu considered the question carefully. We'll teach you what you need to know, but I hope you never need to use it. As the reality of victory settled over the council chamber, alien representatives struggled to process what they had witnessed. Humanity had saved the galaxy, but not through the brutal methods they had feared. Instead, they had demonstrated that sometimes the most ruthless strategy was also the most compassionate. The Devourers were free. The galaxy was saved. And the universe had learned that humans were far more dangerous as enemies and far more valuable as allies than anyone had imagined. But perhaps most importantly, they had learned that sometimes the choice between civilization and barbarism wasn't about methods, it was about results. The humans had used whatever means necessary to achieve the greatest good, even when those means horrified the very people they were saving. As Admiral Parker's fleet began the long journey home, escorting confused but grateful former enemies toward an uncertain but hopeful future, one truth became clear to every observer. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. And perhaps in a universe full of ancient threats and sleeping horrors, that was exactly what everyone needed most.